give him a round of applause, Brian Haugen.
At about 10 p.m. on Friday, August 29th, 2008, I walked into the hospital emergency room. Two people greeted me right off the bat. One was my associate pastor, Lou Wilder, on my left, and the other one was the hospital community relations person on my right. I was in full military gear, having come from a hurricane preparation unit that I was deputy brigade commander of, so I was in total colonel mode. And I said, "What do we got?" And they said, "We have multiple liver lacerations." My knees buckled. Buckled for two reasons. One, I've seen multiple liver laceration injury one time and it didn't work out well. And for the second reason, I instantly had a revelation of my purpose and a stark realization that this was the start of it. I knew right then and there that this was the beginning of my purpose-driven life and my path forward. That path didn't start so great. As a kid, my real father, most people don't know, was a flight surgeon in the Air Force, medical doctor, 26 years old, in his first duty station, worked late hours and fell asleep behind the wheel and passed away. I was 2. My mother and my 2 sisters and I lived in poverty for a few years until my mom was blessed to meet my dad, Don Haugen, and married him when I was about 5. He's, for some reason, adopted all of us, and that's a blessing because he's been my dad ever since. However, at the time we had no relationship whatsoever. My dad and I didn't see eye to eye. His dad died when he was 2. He didn't know how to raise me, and I was a peculiar child, as you can well imagine. Still a peculiar child. We had several moved here. My father was assigned as the first commander of Duke Field in 1971. He's the founding commander of 919th. The headquarters building is named after him. I always like to say that my father and my son are famous. They both have buildings named after them, and I'm the schlep wedged in between the generations. But I was a broken child. I was lost. I was dismal. I had no focus, no direction. I had a loose relationship with Jesus. I was confirmed, but I needed a change. I needed direction. I needed hope. And I was living in Massachusetts at the time. Yikes. So I actually chose on my own to go to military school, to finish high school. I went to Marion Military Institute, where the bad boys go. And I went on my own, but I was kind of a bad boy, so I fit in pretty good. And it just reminded me that Isaiah 41:10 says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, and I will help you, and I will uphold you with my righteousness." And that's what happened at Marion. I immediately became directed and focused and motivated. And I was there for about 2 weeks, and I called my dad, and I said, "Dad, I know what I want to be when I grow up." He said, "Really?" I said, "I want to be an airborne ranger and a platoon leader in the 82nd Airborne Division." And his reply was, "Thanks, Dad. Good night." But I continued to seek direction from the Lord. 2 Samuel 22:33 says, "It is God who arms me with strength and keeps my way secure." I went to Marion, I graduated, did well. I went on to college there, went to ROTC basic camp, graduated number 1 in my unit, and did well enough to get a full ROTC scholarship to Marion. They sent me on to airborne school. I got to become a cadet lieutenant colonel at Marion, which is kind of a big deal at Marion. And I got my commission from Marion Military Institute as well, in the Army. Psalm 32:8 says, "I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you, and with my loving eye on you." So I continue to follow this path. I went on to University of West Florida, got a 2nd degree. I got a direct commission into the regular Army, which is a West Point style commission. They sent me, I got selected to be infantry, which is the most sought after branch in the Army at the time. And I got the number 1 unit everybody wanted to be in as a 2nd lieutenant of the 82nd Airborne Division. I went on and went to Ranger School, got my tab and became a jump master, and later Special Forces Green Beret. pretty good gig. I'd done it, and my dad and I bonded for the first time after and we remained very close until he passed away in 2015. By the way, he was a general, so he told me one time when I was all those things, and a captain, a couple of combat tours, I was 26, and he said, "Brian, you've surpassed my career." And that's when I knew that we had bonded, and that stayed that way. I was blessed to meet Kathy, who was a cousin of one of my fraternity brothers, and met her down here in Fort Walton. We got married, and 3 years later had tea. But something wasn't quite right. See, you ever go to Walmart and see those little kids in the little fake cart, that have the little steering wheel, and they're riding around, but mom and dad are actually behind the actual cart? Sometimes the kids does the little cartwheel and it actually goes left. Sometimes they do the right, it actually goes right. Well, I was like that kid in the car. I actually thought that the direction I was going was my direction. It just happened to turn out that the direction I was actually going happened to be the same direction that the Lord wanted me at the time. But I thought it was me. I thought I was the one that was in control. If it was the path that I wanted. You ever been there? You ever been there where things are going well for you and you think that you're on the right path, and then you kind of get to a point where you think, I've got it going on. I'm really good. All right, I'm really good. Well, it took a little while, and my faith started to wane a bit because I was relying entirely on myself. I thought it was all me. But it turns out that the Lord gave me enough rope and enough slack, I began to choke on it. And before I knew it, He began to reel me in by the noose that I put around my own neck from the rope He had given me. I felt that it was about time to be held accountable to the Lord, to take the strength that the Lord built from my weakness and my desperation and use it as a Christian soldier in some capacity. I just didn't know what. Kathy and I were married about 2 months, and I was already scheduled to get off of active duty. Kathy wasn't a big fan of active duty. And we got a little call that said, Iraq had just invaded Saudi Arabia. I'm still in the 82nd Airborne Division. I was gone, just like that. But I got sent to the first Gulf War, came back, got off active duty, stayed in the National Guard Reserves as a Special Forces officer because that role would hopefully never require another combat deployment. Got a job as a financial officer in Pensacola as a rookie, and we starved. I don't know if you know much about being a financial advisor. I know you do, but it's extremely difficult to get started, and you almost never make it without having gone through a few years of starvation. It was from those years that this verse happened. Kathy, she literally said, the baby needs new shoes one day, and we didn't have any money. I mean, the proverbial. So she opens up the coat pocket one day, it's getting chilly out, she puts her hand in, and she pulls this out. She said, "This is the last dollar to our name, Brian, here." I wore that dollar bill in my pocket from 1993 to 94, every day in my pocket as motivation. It seems like when you lose your path and you don't even know it. So I focused on what my path would be, and I prayed on it, what the Lord wanted of me. Psalm 119:35 says, "Direct me in the path of your commands, for there I find delight." Things started to improve for us a bit. 2 years later, we moved over here, joined Payne Weber. At the time, there was no other financial services in Destin, so when Payne Weber came in, we came on over. We joined Crosspoint in Niceville, which when I went to church there, it was First United Methodist Church of Niceville, and we got heavily involved. Kathy actually worked in the preschool, and I did middle school ministry with my son's group. We were confident we were in the right place and on the Lord's path. Then 9/11 happened. And I was gone, just like that. 2 months after 9/11, I was activated from the National Guard. They said it'd be about a 3 to 6 month tour. I may not have to even go to Afghanistan, it might be support. I was gone a year and a half. I commanded a Special Forces unit in Afghanistan right after the horse soldiers. And my first day on the ground, we got hit twice. Hit an IED, wounded 2 of my troops, got to our fire base in Sadabad, took rocket fire. That's a fine how do you do for being there that long. I commanded the highest casualty ratio unit in the country. 16% of my men got hit. Thanks be to God, they all came home. Many missing parts. The mental anguish from the sights, the sounds, and the smells permeate through me to this day. To make things worse, back home, I was working for UBS at the time. They didn't know how to deal with a deployed soldier. Nothing had happened since Vietnam. They kept dropping our health insurance. I didn't get any pay. They've all sorted that thing out now, but when I came home, it got rough. I read about Luke 179 says, to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadows of death, to guide our feet into the path of peace. I kept reflecting on that. And I didn't know how to best react to it until I was in Afghanistan in an area called Garez. And I'm walking through this field, this dry desert almost field, and there's rocks everywhere. The rocks are red and white color. And they do that to identify land mines and mine fields. But the problem is they have these storms come through all the time. The rocks have turned all different directions. I'm on this little path, and I look up, and Haji's leading us on the way, and I said, Haji, you got us in a minefield. He goes, this is nothing you need to worry about. I said, well, yeah, but he goes, this is fine, stay on the path. Well, one of my civil affairs guys got a little spooked, started screaming that we need to go back. I said, hold on, if you stay on this little path and watch Haji, who's from here, you're gonna be fine, just stay on the path. We must go back. I said, you know you got 50% chance either way, right? So you might as well just keep going. He knows what he's doing, he's a local. And it hit me. God's will is not a floodlight that eliminates the dark, but a flashlight that shows your next step. Sometimes the step you take is not lit until you take that step with faith, and if it lights, then you know you took the right step. His will is about present tense obedience before it's about future tense tragedy. Perhaps before better worded, you may not know what to do with tomorrow, but God will show you what to do with today. Our paths are not clear. We may get bumped off, fall off, steer off. Well, we have to get back on it. That's when I placed my military career and safety into God's hands. Did you know that the word path is represented or stated in the Bible 32 times? But the words straight and level path is only named 9 times? I'm not real good at math, but that would mean that about 72% of the time, if we are on his path, it's still not straight and level. Well, after Afghanistan, things went south. My business was gone. There was a crash of O2 occurred, and what business I had created was simply evaporated. We're back to being broke once again. I considered bankruptcy like everybody else did back then, but I had too much pride, and that's when Kathy was doing laundry one day, and she found a dollar bill, which Brian has lost. No doubt, she's not here for stuff. So she says, here you go, this was in your pocket. This is the last dollar turn in. And from 2003 to 2014, years later, I carried that dollar bill in my pocket for a year. I had some PTSD issues, as you might imagine. I didn't think it at the time. I was perfectly fine. And our marriage started to suffer. Not only was our path not straight and level, but we weren't even sure we were on it anymore. Then our UBS team selected and chose to move to Raymond James, something that we've been planning for a while. And right before we made the move, Taylor Reed Haugen died. That's when I put my business in the hands of the Lord. T's death was horrible. It was horrific. It was not an easy death. People think of internal injuries as quiet and simple, and it was far from it. They worked on him all night long, trying to get the liver to work again, and it would not. It's what coagulates blood, so if it doesn't function, you simply continue to bleed out. Body holds about 5 units of blood. They put about 42 through him that night. I knew he was gone. The second I saw him that evening at 11, I'd seen dead people look more alive than my son did. Kath and I had figured out early in the morning that there was nothing there. He had been brain dead from probably the beginning, from lack of blood. And when they finally came to us and brought us in that small little room, she told me and said, he's not going to make it. You know, you need to consider your options. Well, I was actually anticipating that because I wanted the boy to be free to go home. So they cleared out the ICU so I could sign the document while Kathy stayed inside with T. I guess they're used to doing this because I've never seen an ICU empty. And I stood there and was about to sign that document, knowing it was the right thing to do. Actually, kind of in some ways looking forward to giving them some freedom. But something wasn't right. Something just wasn't right. And I paused, and just then my executive director walked in the door. He had no idea what was going on. Greg McKinnon. He looked at me, he looked down at the sheet of paper, looked back up, and he goes, "Brian, you want to pray?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And we prayed over that, and it was when we were able to move forward. Kathy and I were not in a very good place before T died. In fact, we were not heading in the right direction at all. So we started going through marriage counseling. The stats on losing a lost child is about 70% divorce if you have other children. And if that's your only child, it's about 95%. Our marriage counselor recommended that we attend this thing called Wedding Intensive. You ever heard of Truett Cathy's program called Windshape Foundation? I want you to remember this in case you know this, because it is marriage counseling on different levels and in different areas. But the one we attended up at Berry College, it's also in Branson, it's called Marriage Intensive. And my gosh, it's for strong Christian couples who are breaking up. We had pastors and lay people everywhere in there. It was about 5 or 6 couples, and it's intense for about 3 days. It really helped us, but tell you what really made the difference for us. Our Christian counselor, Mike Tallman, said, "You guys need to stop focusing on each other and stop focusing on yourselves. You need to focus on one thing and one thing only, the cross." He said, if you focus on that cross, and only on that cross, you will meet at the base. So that's when I released my marriage into God's hands. We did meet at the base, and when we got there, the foundation was kind of moving a little bit with the scholarship program, and she says, "I really want to make sure this never happens to somebody again as best I can. I really want to do something nationally." And I really started looking down at my feet and kicking the dirt because I knew that was going to be one tough job to take on. But that was our calling. So soon we created the YES program, which stands for Youth Equipment for Sports Safety. We're the only nonprofit in the country that provides abdominal injury awareness and protection to secondary school football athletes in the country or world, I don't even know. Since then, we've outfitted over 5,000 kids in 16 states. We've provided locally 78 scholarships totaling over $120,000. We've put out 13 trophies to the All Sports Association. And it's all because of Romans 8:28. You knew I was going to say that, didn't you? It's always 8:28. It's one of the ones that always gets misunderstood by people who are non-secular. It says there's good things come from all things, or all bad things can create a good thing. And of course, as we all know, that's not what it says. It says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." All who know me know that I am no saint. I struggle with the fruits of the Holy Spirit. I focus on love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control every day. I deal difficultly with, some of those areas more than others. But I know that the Lord's got a purpose for me and a path for me. And despite my rough background and my military background, it's working out fairly well so far. I want to end this in a little prayer that St. Augustine gave a long time ago. But before I do, I want to tell you the rest of that story that I started with. When I walked in that emergency room, and those guys thankfully grabbed me by the elbows, or I'd probably fallen, I was giving that story to somebody over the years, and Lou Wilder pulled me aside 3 or so years later and said, "Brian, there's something I got to tell you. You've been telling people that we grabbed your elbows and held you up. I'm going to tell you something. Neither one of us touched you. That was the Holy Spirit that got a hold of you." So if you would, just please join me in quick prayer. God of our life, there are days when the burdens we carry chafe our shoulders and weigh us down. When the road seems dreary and endless, the sky's gray and threatening, when our lives have no music in them, and our hearts are lonely, and our souls have lost their courage. Flood the path with light. Run our eyes to where the skies are full of promise. Tune our hearts to praise music. Give us the sense of community with heroes and saints of every age, and so quicken our spirits that we may be able to encourage the souls of all who journey with us on the road of life to honor you and to your glory. Amen.